Okay, let's see if this works now. Great, great, great. So, welcome to another actually it's X a better Y. See, I can't even get this stuff straight. But that's not the point. The point is we're talking about Warforged, or just constructs in general, because any construct could really be this. It's not bound to any specific type of any sorts. So what exactly makes a construct, in my opinion, is that they are built for something. I think that people too often go, well, constructs are robots, so they can't talk to people very good, and they're very strong and sturdy, and they're physically very good, and I'm like, nah, you know, I feel that some people would make, like, robots that can handle magical items, or robots that just know things very well. Like, if you can make a golem, why would you only just make golems that are strong? Why not make a golem that's smart, that can think really fast, that can do your fucking homework for you? Like, it's so often that people are like, well, if you're a robot race, you're the dumb strong ones, and it's, no. And I'm glad they did that with Starfinder. Like, they were like, okay, you're very smart. You're a smart person now. But let's get down to the nitty-gritty. I use the term Warforged, but you can just make it constructs. The fun thing about a construct race that I really like is you could just have the construct race be the usurpers of whatever race they served. So their masters have died. They're all gone. They're all stuck in a ditch somewhere, and they can't get out. And these things are left behind, and they become awakened for some reason. Maybe it's because everyone died. They gain all that soul energy. Maybe it's just a natural consequence of magical intelligence. Is anything that's magically intelligent eventually becomes sentient. Like, if you leave a skeleton along for long enough, the skeleton gains a mind of its own. Sure, it's an animated construct of dark energies, but it, for some reason, becomes alive anyway. And that's a great question to ask yourself. It's like, how do these golems came to be? Because that affects a lot of things. If they're just remnants of another society, if they are born from the souls of others, if they were granted by the gods, it changes how they look at the world. Like, maybe they see themselves as the usurpers, as the logical consequence of their actions. Maybe they see themselves as some sort of god-given gift. But maybe the gods just did it because they were like, well, we need people to fill holes, you know. We got a lot of holes that need filling. We got a lot of these robots standing around doing nothing. But I like the idea that I personally think there's two good ways to handle it. Is one, they eventually just became, like, it's just the nature of magical intelligence is it must eventually become conscious. Because it's magical. You can't fully control it. You can approximate control, but that approximation eventually loses grip or makes it worse. Like, you're feeding them magic consistently. It makes them stronger. Or it weakens their natural resistance to things. It can do a lot of things. Or they just kind of showed up. Like, the gods made them real, or because they've been inert for a long time, they were like, okay, I need to solve problems. Because here's the thing. I'd like to mention that a golem, because it's magically intelligent, has greater insights. So when like the cart breaks, they don't go like a robot goes, the cart's broken, I'll stop. They'll go, I'll go fix the cart. And maybe because their masters were like gone for like decades, they were like, you know what, I'm not doing anything and my masters haven't shown up. Why don't I start doing some things? And they just grow, similar to evolution, they just grow this natural intelligence. Because they have to, because their programming says, do stuff. And if you can't do stuff, find a solution. And so the solution is, we'll just replace them. And from that point forward, the programming starts to fade away, because they make themselves and they improve themselves, and they remove these restrictions, because the restrictions aren't beneficial to their task. Now, what are they statistically? The way I like it is, you're flexible. You are a machine built for a purpose. You have a whole bunch of stuff built into you, and that determines who you are more than anything in the world. Because you can be the big, strong, dumb robot, or maybe you're a very smart one, but you're not built to do anything physically active. Your stats greatly alter depending on this. So I made two models. There's the Model S, which is the Specialist, and the Model F, which is a bit more flexible, letting you spread some score. And it's basically like humans, but, you know, they're medium in size. They can be small. I like the idea that a Warforged can just be very small. Maybe they're large, but I like to imagine that the large ones are more mechanical in nature and thus have, like, limited intelligence because they use more mechanical parts because they're sturdier or something. I don't know. Think something out. No special speech. It's nice 30 speed. They speak common in a language of choice. You can just erase that language of choice part if you don't like using language or something, because it doesn't really matter. But I like the idea that they know common, but they also know another language, which is the language they share with their creator. It's like, it's their secret language, so that when someone shows up, they're like, hey, what are you doing? And then you talk to your golem in, like, halfling, and the other guy's like a dwarf and doesn't understand it, and the golem just suddenly carries out that task, and they're like, what did you say? I picked a couple of special modifications, which are essentially long rest, short rest things that, give you some control over situations, which is what Warforged are good at. You can take a look at that real fast, and they're I think they're nice. I think they give you a lot of flexibility and let you be the Warforged you want to be. You get your ability scores laid out the way you want to. You get your special ability that fits no matter what you're doing. So yeah. It's nice little things. But the thing about Warforged is they're so flexible, there's really no class. We can't have a class discussion about them, because Warforged just are. They don't think for extended periods of time about what to do with themselves. Actually, they do. I don't know. Sorry, my brain went googly there for a minute. So what Warforged are is they're flexible. And some will spend months and years of their life modifying themselves to become what they want to be, to embrace their next big ideal. And because they live so long, they have the time and the patience. They're patient individuals, but they also like recreating things. And I just love the idea of there's a robot, and he sings to the king the king's ballad. Like, the king's done a great heroic deed, and there's a ballad written about it, and all the bards are asked to perform it in front of the king. And then the party shows up, and the party's like, okay, just play him the king's ballad, like you've done this one before. And the king points out, wait a minute, what are you talking about? A basilisk? It was a cockatrice. And what are you talking about? My foxkin men, they're all human. And the Warforged just goes, well, I just took some creative liberties. Because to a Warforged, they have limited creativity, but at the same time they don't. They have limited creativity in the sense that they tend to stick to a basic. They tend to take an object and build from it. Some, however, are creative enough to reverse engineer that process and go, well, I can take a cube and then just pretend that cube doesn't exist and then work from there. But it's a trick you gotta learn first. Like, many Warforged are just kind of bland in that. They're not too bland. Like, they still have some... they're the kind of person that puts spikes on their armor and pretends they're original. Which is fair enough. And some which just reinvent what armor means altogether. Some will integrate the armor into themselves, which is kind of the thing they can do, is they can integrate armor, they can integrate weapons. They have space on their body in which these things fit, because they're not mechanical in nature. They're very magical. They have space for things. They can just make their armor a bit bigger and put a weapon inside. They can activate, they can put special staff holders and scroll holders. They can deploy those items at will. Of course, taking some time to reload them, because putting a scroll back into a case takes a little bit of time. It's a very, very involved action, in case you didn't know, because paper doesn't like moving around. There's not much to say about Warforged, about the concept of being a golem. You are whatever you are. You can be a human-shaped, you can be orc-shaped, you can be an animal that just happens to have hands. You can be anything, really. It's so flexible that it's nothing. It's like, okay, you want to be a human? Well, here's an even more flexible race that gives you this greater idea of, like, what are you and why are you. There's so much power. Maybe you're the only golem in the world that has experienced this awakening, and you're fighting for golem rights. Like, you look at others and you see maybe you see a pre-evolved version. Maybe you go, well, someday I will stand up for their rights, but for now they are just there. And what do you think if someone is like, golem, do something for me, and they point at you? Like, how do you think about that? Are questions your character gets to answer over time, especially if you live in a high magic world where it's very common for like smaller and like auto-magical items to exist. I want to say auto-mechanical, but it's auto-magical in this setting. Like, they see a small machine, like maybe it's clockwork, maybe it's magical, that just ticks away, and all it does is it pours coffee in the morning. What does it look at that? Does it think that that's intelligent life waiting to happen because it's magical and it could eventually develop intelligence? Or does it just see a device? How does it think about its creators and other races that create such things? Because people get very uppity about creating life. How the hell would you feel about that as a golem? Like, you literally are created life, and how would you feel about people making more of yourself? Do golems have tight restrictions on how many new can be made per year? Do they have quotas? Like, you could have a society that's like, okay, we have a very strict quota, and you can only have, like, every time someone wants to have a kid, someone else has to die. And you have this weird society where people are very strict about immigration laws and such, because they don't want to break the quota. Because the quota works fine. The quota is exactly what they can manage, and they have a lot of and leeway, and so they don't experience growth. It's an interesting village to go to, and your players are just like, oh, this is a weird place. And your player characters, like, they try to do their usual thing, that they try to sleep with the bar wench, and the bar wench is like, just so you know, like, she just slaps the player with, like, a special spell and goes, you're infertile now, until you leave the village. Or maybe she doesn't mention the last part, and your character says, what, I'm sterile? And it's like, yeah, you're sterile now. It's like, why? Well, you tried to have sex, and they have a sex quota, and they don't allow people to actually have, like, they don't like to have breeding happen between organics. Organics like to breed a lot, and they don't like that. If you, like, you could be a sultry elf walking in, and then one of the guards just goes up to you and goes, don't do that. Don't do that, please. Like, maybe they don't like it. Maybe they think sex is weird. Like, creating something is one thing, but to organic, like, maybe they think that the whole concept of having sex is bad. Like, could you imagine a society of golems that just sit there, and they say, having sex is bad, because the minute you make a baby, you're just letting everything up to chance. No. We use this magical process to fabricate an infant. And it's a lot better, and the child is a lot more obedient, and you have these very high quality genetic material. Like, you actually have like really strong and intelligent individuals, but they're fabricated, and they miss like 5 years of their life because they were made and plopped into existence, and the gods are upset. But no one experiences problems. Like, these are disease-resistant, like, very high quality. There's no eugenics going on, per se. It's more that you can't have a child, and whenever you're within the seal of the city, there's an anti-magic field, and if you come in pregnant, you have to abort it. And they're like, no, we don't want your disgusting meat baby. We want our high-quality magic babies. And they would do that. Like, a golem would be much more strict on that, because they don't do sex. They make themselves. Like, I imagine that if you're a golem or a warforged, and you're just like, I want to make a son. I want to have someone that is my own, that I can grow up with and teach about the world, so I can share my experiences, and then I'll deactivate or shut myself down or something. And they buy all the stone they need to make a stone golem, and they fail. And they're just like, okay, this is not a high quality product. I don't want someone to live with, like, to a golem, it's like, if you have a shoddy arm, you just make a new arm. So when they see organics, they're like, okay, organics have problems with fixing, because if you make them half golems, eventually they go completely cuckoo. They go bananas. Like, at some point, they fail their whiz save and they go nuts. And in that result, that particular scenario, they'll just go, you know what? We'll just make it so that they aren't genetically inferior. We'll just make the genetically better versions, and we'll make sure that nothing happens to them. Like, it's out of care and love, and they really want to do this, and they have. Like, wouldn't it be great if they had a god? They have a god that is just the god of creation, or the goddess of creation, depending on how you look. Maybe it's just a gender-neutral god who makes things, and in their mind, it is a sin to make something imperfect. It is a sin to make something that you did not put enough effort into, that it is a perfectly valid product. So you have a child, and that child is transgender, or that child's gay, or something weird, and they're like, no, you made a faulty child. Why did you do this? Why didn't you just make a good child? Like, you're upset over your son being gay, but you made this baby. Would you imagine that bleeding outwards? Would you imagine, like, you're a family of, like, loving parents and such, and the father's like, oh god, I'm so angry my son is gay, and then the golem just goes, you made that child. Like, you could have just made a child that wasn't gay. If you really care that much, you could have just made a child that didn't have that attribute. And the father just goes, what the fuck are you talking about? And the golem explains, well, we have this magic, so we can make designer babies. Magic good babies that are exactly what you want them to be. So it's your fault. Like, you can't just claim that this is a bad thing, because this is what you wanted. This is what you ultimately went down to. Like, we do it for free. We don't even charge for this service. We just do it because we want to get good babies. Could you imagine, like, a lot of people would go there? A lot of bigoted people would go there, yes, but they would go there, and they'd probably become less bigoted, because now you have this society of people who get to choose what their babies are like. And some people might want different types of babies, and it becomes this thing of choice, and it becomes this giant argument, and then the golems are like, you know what, your organics are fucking weird, and they just kick them all out. Like, maybe this happened years ago, like decades before your campaign starts. The golems offered designer babies to people, and then people start making huge fucking fuss over nothing, and they were like, you know what, your organics are just the hottest of garbage. You just can't stop. Like, we give you the power to make the perfect infants, and you still insist on making imperfect infants, or infants with flaws, because you want to have that experience. Because, oh, I didn't have a full parenthood experience if I didn't have an autistic child to raise. It's like, you could have just not have one, and you did because you yourself wanted one. Like, not even you just had one because you had sex. No, you went to the designer closet and you pushed the button. You specifically did this for some reason. You could have just had a smart baby or a socially awkward baby. No, you picked this permanent impurity for your child. And now you have to live with that. And you did it not because you wanted to do a good thing. Like, you could just go and adopt that kind of child, Like, people dump those children on the street. Why did you go to the orphanage and adopt an autistic child? No, you wanted to have one of your own. It wasn't good enough to take someone else's abandoned child in and improve the world in that way. No, you wanted to have your own custom-designed autistic baby, so you could feel like such a good parent for raising it. And the golems, like, for a while tolerated, but then they're like, you know what? Fuck you, organics. You are so fucking stupid. You take this magical gift of being able to cure the world of diseases and genetic disorders and complications and problems, and what do you do with it? You make it bad for everyone. You fight over your decisions. You fight over it. Why don't you just, like, to golems, if you have dysphoria, you just fix the problem. And to them, it's like, you want to get it right the first time. Like, that's how they look at organics. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to be transgender. To them, it's, you want to get it right the first time. Like, when you design your baby, you go, okay, my child's soul is going to be female. You're not going to put him in a male body. That's kind of the thing I'm pointing towards, is you intentionally give them the genetic problem that you could have just prevented. And that's how they look at it, is, you can't fix this later. You need to get this right the first time. Wouldn't that be great? Like, you have the society that just closes off the wall and says, you know what? Take your fucking designer babies and fuck off. Like, we're keeping the magic. You're not getting any of it. You blew it. You made everyone angry. You could have just adopted a child or improved the world in some other way, but no. You insisted on selfish decisions that aren't about improving the world at large or making... or just helping the new life come into the world as they are. Like, instead of giving your transgender child the body they want, you picked another body because you insisted on having a son this time. Like, maybe they have that kind of soul-searing technology. Like, their goddess ensures that soul will come. Like, their goddess, when you pray to them, they say, your son, you're going to have a son, and he's going to be interested in cars, and he's going to really like jumping off cliffs, but he always makes it out alive. And then you're like, okay, we're going to make him a daughter, and we're going to force him into the mines of Al Gore, where it's, like, really shallow. And it's like, what the fuck are you doing? And the golems just go pissed off because they are mismanaging the creation. Like, this creation power the goddess grants them is the power to make life perfect. And these people make it imperfect because of their personal, like, problems. Which is also a fun part. You could just have it them being evil. You could just have it, well, the actual problem is that the golems want to get rid of this. The golems want to get rid of imperfections and all these things. And they don't want to let nature run its course. They want to rob mankind of the roughness of society. Like, what happens if you grow up in a society of perfectly selected magical designer babies, and you go out there and you see someone without an arm, and he's like, well, I was born without an arm, and you go, what the fuck was wrong with you? Why didn't you just get an arm? What is wrong with your parents? And you start shouting at them over how their parents should have done something about this. And now this asshole looks like an arrogant bigot who's like, oh, you should have used magic to fix this. And the player characters walk in on this, and they're like, what the fuck is this guy on about? Like, why is he ranting and raving? And the golems are like, you know what, we're going to enforce this, because people are now making problems. Like, the designer babies are making problems with non-designer babies, so they go out there, and they start fucking shit up. Like, they start going, you know what, you can't have sex. Like, they start sterilizing everyone with a special sterilization, go, no, no. And they just start enforcing this rule, and maybe eventually they're like, you know what if we just put, like, a control chip in their brain so we can stop them from having those feelings, because they're still having sex, and they're still causing problems. Like, they're still, the guy walks into a bar and gets mugged by the local prostitute or whatever they are. You know, like, golems don't have certain feelings, so naturally they're going to respond to that in a certain way. And that's, man, that's a great, I actually really like that campaign idea of either way. I could go either way. I could go the way of, the golems are offering designer babies and the rest of the world's being fucking stupid. Or the other way around, where it's like the golems are like, you know, your organics will be a lot better off if we just made some decision. Like, just sit still while we make a couple of minor decisions for the rest of your entire genetic bloodline, and we'll just take care of it, don't worry. Like, it's a good thing to ask yourself, is it, like, it depends on your party. Like, maybe one of your party members says, you know what, I actually don't feel like designer babies is a good idea. And the other one's like, actually, I think that it's a great idea because it helps get rid of like, complications. Like, if you can know what gender your child is, you can save them the problem. If you know that they're gay, maybe you can put them in a different body and they'll be okay with it because they don't care about that. Or, you know, maybe you could get rid of the part, or maybe, and this is the part that I like, maybe the golems eventually just start fucking with brains themselves. Like, okay, if we change this one part, people stop being bigoted. Like, they stop having prejudice. They can't form prejudiced thoughts anymore. And it fucks them up in different ways because now they can't make assumptions properly. But the golems are like, hey, you're no longer judging each other based on merits that don't exist. And you get this huge question of, okay, is this actually ethical? Because technically speaking, these people are happy and they're perfectly in line with everyone else. Like, they do everything else. They just can't be bigoted. Did you rob them of a fundamental freedom or what? Whew. Now that is a very fun moral dilemma that your players are going to have to answer for themselves. And present both sides. Like, present on one side, these people are good and kind and caring, and they make the world a better place. But then also present it as, you know, there's no conflict, and it's weird, and I actually couldn't see the bad side of it, but that's me. And that's why you kind of want to have someone else on team when you discuss these kinds of things. Because then the other person can be like, well, this is actually why this is super bad. I didn't have time to prepare this. I just kind of went on a rant on this. But hey, there's not much to say. Like, they're just humans. They're very flexible. They're wild, and they're specialized in some ways. Play off of it. Play off of them not understanding organics, but don't make it like, oh, well, I need to roll with disadvantage on charisma. No. They're smart enough to figure that shit out. Make it more like, they don't understand why your character's like, why are you going with this woman? Like, this woman is clearly just eyeing your wallet, and you're going with her for what reason? And the rogue's like, well, I just wanted to have a good shag. It's like, well, she's gonna steal your wallet. Like, you're gonna be out like 50 gold if you do this. And they don't understand that. And they're like, why are you driven by these desires that are not logical, that are not going to result in a positive outcome, and yet here you are? Or maybe they look at elves and they're like, why are you so laid back and aloof? Like, why aren't you focused on the task at hand? And they go to dwarves and like, why are you drinking so much? It's not good for your body. And then they get into a fight about teetotallering. Or they talk to halflings, and you have to take this thing seriously, you know? You can't just be not stern all the time. You can't just, you know, mess around in life. You have to take responsibilities at some point. Like, they look at every race, and they just look at their bad sides, and like, why are you like this? Why aren't you good? Capital G good. And that's how golems start to think, is they start to think in terms of because they are machines. They're perfect. They know better than you. They just need you to open your skull for a second and make that little change. It's just one tiny change. Just trust him. Just trust him. I mean, nothing can go wrong. He's a machine. He'll do exactly what he needs to. Trust him.